Well, shalom, everyone, and welcome to our Shabbat night service. It is Shabbat, and we are excited about this opportunity to come and study together the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And the word is in Hebrew, Torah means instructions. So we say that these first 5 books are the instructions that were given to Moshe on Mount Sinai over a period of time. And then he was told by Jehovah, the creator of all things, to write these down and to preserve them for the children of Israel. And the job of the children of Israel was to preserve them for all mankind. So we come together every Shabbat to go over these lessons and study together. And we are excited about all that we can learn on each and every night of our presentation. So I thank you so much for joining me on this lesson. And we're going to listen to this music for a minute or so and allow others an opportunity to come on. And then we are going to begin our lesson. So once again, shalom, welcome, and let's get ready to have a great time in lesson 8, Vayishlach, and he sent. The prophetess Linda has joined, so welcome to our study. We're going to listen to the music for 1 more minute, giving others a chance to join in, and for those in the location that I am, for them to join with us. So shalom to you. Welcome. It was great seeing you on my journey into California. So we'll be starting in about a minute. This is lesson 8, titled Vayishlach. And we're going to have a great time going through this word on tonight. So much to learn. So much as it revolves around, even we'll see different aspects of our lives, because that's one aspect of our study each and every time we come together. And that's called practical application. So how do we practically apply this word that we're learning to what's going on in each and every one of our lives? So we're getting ready to get going because we've given everybody a chance to join us. I'm going to shut the music off, and we are going to get ready to go. Let me shut this phone off because I don't want to get called. All right. So with that, once again, I say shalom, and we're going to pray and then get into our lesson for tonight. Jehovah, our Elohim, we bless you for this day. This is the day that you have made. We rejoice. We are glad in it. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and study your word, studying to show ourselves approved, workmen not ashamed of our hire, rightly dividing the words of truth. Thank you for the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, that comes to guide us into our lesson on tonight. And we yield these earthen vessels, fill us all the more with your presence, and give us the revelatory knowledge of your word. In the name of Yeshua, HaMashiach, our Lord, Savior, and King, we pray this prayer and we say, Amen. All right. With that, we are going to get into our slide presentation and then get into our lesson for tonight. My sister was trying to get in. Okay. I think she got in. All right. I think you got in, and we're going to go into our shared screen and get started. Okay. I don't know why. Let me see if I can it went. All right. With that, let's get to our slideshow presentation. And all right. Okay, I don't know. I got to figure out how to get rid of that. Anyway, this is lesson 8, called in Hebrew Vayishlach, and it means "and he sent." As we continue with Yaakov or Jacob on his journey back into the land of Canaan, and we're going to see some interesting things. We're going to go over a map for just a bit as we get into our lesson. Our first slide will be a map, so we can just see the difference of the journey that Yaakov took on his return into the land. And first, it was going into Haran, to where he was going to get his wife. And he ends up with 4 wives, and his journey back to confront his brother Esau. And it's just a fascinating lesson, so much to practically apply to each and every one of our lives. We'll also notice that Yaakov went through much testing while he was in the land of Haran, as he met Laban, a worthy adversary, his uncle Laban, and his uncle treated him like the person that his uncle was. And so Yaakov had to fight many battles in terms of spiritual and physical battles, but Jehovah, the Creator, told him that he, on his journey to the land, that he was going to return him back to the land. And Yaakov said that if indeed I return back to the land safe and sound with my bride with me and all that I've gleaned in that land, then I will give tithe to the priest of the land and gladly, joyfully give 1/10 of all that I have acquired. And so we notice that there's going to be a part in here as we go through our lesson outline, where we're going to talk about his hip being placed out of joint, and this wrestling with his angel, or that had come to remind him of where he was. And then they wrestle all night. Why? Because the same thing that each of us have to do, we have to face in many parts of our lives, we have to face situations and circumstances that require us to make choices. And in this particular case, Yaakov, even though he had been a part of a trickster, Laban, and all that he had done to him, all of this was designed to test him and to train him for what was to lie ahead. The different trials and things that we go through in this life are never meant to destroy, but to strengthen and prepare us for different things that are part of our purpose here on this earth. So we're going to see that in the book of Ephesians, it talked about how we don't wrestle against chapter 6. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, evilness in the heavenly realms. And so we see an angel wrestling with Yaakov, different battles that Yaakov had to deal with Laban and all the trials and things that Laban had put him through. Yet and still, as he was coming back to the land, angels then met him and were prepared to, in fact, aid him on his journey, knowing that he was going to need aid on this journey. So this wrestling with his spirit, between his spirit and his flesh, he overcame that situation, but his flesh was going to suffer. Remember, he was the supplanter, the one who grabbed the heel of his twin brother Esau upon birth, the one who had stolen the birthright of Esau, who was the firstborn. And all of this had been prophesied, that aspect of being the priestly lineage of the family, going to the second born, even though they were twins and born one after another. The practice of the society at that time was that the firstborn became the priestly version, and that continued all the way up until Moses. And what he then, because of the golden calf, that particular ritual was disbanded. And then you had to come through the lineage of Levi or Levi. And so we see all of that coming to bear and having to face that final hurdle, which was his brother Esau, whom the last time he had seen him promised to, in fact, kill him. He didn't know whether his father or mother were still alive, but he was going to find out on our lesson for today. So with that, we're going to get into our first slide, which, as I said, was going to be a map to show the journey that he took to Haran. This yellow arrow shows where they were born, where he left, went to Bethlehem, Luz, as it was called, then on to Shechem, and then on into the land of Gilead, all the way up into Haran. And then he returned the same way. Now, he could have gone in this journey and followed along the coast and gotten to the same place in Haran, but that was not the journey he took. And remember, even though his father and mother, well, let's just say his father was very wealthy, his parents were wealthy, he left with nothing but some water and a staff. And now he's returning with herds of cattle, minimum 13 children, and 4 wives, and then servants and other things, others that he had gathered for his journey back to his father Isaac, who had set up camp in and around Haran, Hebron rather, which is in this area here. And so from here, he went up to Haran and then he returned back. And this land over here, as we look down here, this land is called Seir or Edom. And so Edom was the domain of his brother Esau. Esau had left the land of Hebron and come in this direction to take and control all of this land. And so it kind of gives us an idea of the length of the journey itself, because he could have gone up this way through Damascus and up to Iran, but he didn't. He came back this way, had to cross over the Jordan back into the land of Israel. And upon getting ready to go into the land, he was instructed to where to go, which was Bethel, or in this land here. And so we see that this land, Mount Moriah here, is called Bethel. And he was told to go back there. And then from there, he went back down into like Hebron and Beersheba, the area of Isaac. And so this kind of gives us a little understanding of the journey and how he decided to come across the Jordan rather than take the other route, which would have gotten him to the same location, but he wouldn't have had to cross over the Jordan upon his return. And he was still going to face Esau, but he would have faced him in the land of Canaan and not over here in the land of Seir and the plains of Gilead, where he ends up wrestling with an angel. Right in this area, you see that start. So from here, in this area, he wrestled and then went across over into this land and went to Bethel. So with that, let's get into our Haftarah, our companion study, which is from the book of Obadiah. It's only one chapter, and it has more than 21 verses, but the Haftarah, or the section that we're dealing with, only had the one. We only went to verse 21. And this is a fascinating book because it's all about what is going to take place with Edom or Esau, which is a part of our lesson for today, as Yaakov left his mother and father to go to get a wife with the command of his father to go and do that. His mother wanted him to do that, but he said he wasn't going to leave her. And so she went and talked to Isaac, and then Isaac told him to go and get a wife. Don't marry anyone from the land of Canaan. And we see that his brother Esau, who was very fleshly orientated, a hunter and a warrior and doing all those things, but could not control himself, and who had already married 2 Canaanite women, which they had been taught was forbidden. And so with that, we get into our companion study in Obadiah, and it reads, it's all about Edom or Esau and what's going to happen to him, because he was continually at war with his brother, refusing them to go through his territory upon trying to come back into the promised land under the direction of Moses, and refusing to let them come. So there were always a battle between them two. And we're going to see some of that in our lesson on today. This is the vision of Obadiah. Here is what Jehovah Elohim says about Edom. Edom and Esau are the same. As a messenger was being sent among the nations saying, come on, let's attack her. We heard a message from Jehovah. I am making you the least of all nations. You will be beneath contempt. Why? Because he really spurned his birthright and was continually after the flesh, even to the point where he was willing to kill his brother. Your proud heart has deceived you. You whose homes are caves in the cliffs, who live on the heights and say to yourselves, who can bring me down to the ground? If you make your nest as high as an eagle's, even if you place it among the stars, I will bring you down from there, says Jehovah. If thieves were to come to you, with robbers by night. Oh, how destroyed you are. Wouldn't they stop when they'd stolen enough? If grape pickers came to you, wouldn't they leave some grapes for gleaning? But see how Esau has been looted. So the whole concept is Obadiah is predicting what will happen to Edom in the future. Why? Because even at the last and final attack on the temple after the time of Yeshua in 70 AD, Edom sided with the Romans, which they believe were part of their ancestry or their lineage, against his brother Israel. And so all of this was prophesied by Obadiah, that all that you have done, yet and still, you're going to be brought down. And then as we conclude this companion study, it says, for the day of Jehovah is near for all nations. As you did, it will be done to you. Your dealings will come back on your own head. For just as you have drunk on my holy mount, they were taught, Esau was taught by Isaac and by Abraham what he was supposed to do. But he refused to adhere to the teachings of Abraham and Isaac and what had been handed down to them. And so the priestly lineage, not only did he not respect it, but he rejected it. So it goes on to say, for just as you have drunk on my holy mountain, so will all the nations drink in turn. Yes, they will drink and gulp it down and be as if they had never existed. So Jehovah is going to come and take care. And we know that when Yeshua returns, he's going to rule from Jerusalem with an iron hand for 1,000 years. He says, but on Mount Zion, there will be a holy remnant who will escape, and the house of Jacob will repossess their rightful inheritance. The house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, setting aflame and consuming the stubble, which is the house of Esau. None of the house of Esau will remain, for Jehovah has spoken. Those in the Negev, which is the area I showed you with Gilead and all that was on the map, will repossess the mountain of Esau. So different people will come and rule that land. And those in the Shephelah, the land of the Philistines, they will repossess the field of Ephraim and the field of Shemron or Samaria. And Benjamin will occupy Gilead. So all of this land is going to be taken over by Israel and ruled by them, even though it appeared at this time, at the time of the prophet Obadiah, that Edom was great and a mighty warrior, and it was continually at war with Israel by their ancestor Esau, who refused to acknowledge the priestly lineage, who refused to acknowledge the teachings, and demanded to live in his own way at his own weight of doing it and not being obedient to the word. And when we look at the Brit Hadasha companion study, 1 Corinthians 5, 1 through 13, it reads the first 5 verses say it is actually being reported that there is sexual sin among you, and it is sexual sin of a kind that is condemned even by pagans. So the whole concept of sexual sins goes right back to the fact of Esau rebuking the teachings of whom he was supposed to marry, whom he was not supposed to marry, and how he was to adhere to those teachings, refused and married 2 daughters of Canaanites, the Hittites. And it goes on to say that this man living in the church at Corinth was living with his stepmother. And you stay proud. Shouldn't you rather have felt some sadness that would have led you to remove from your company the man who has done this thing? For I myself, even though I'm absent physically, this is Shaul, writing to the church at Corinth, am with you spiritually. I have already judged the man who has done this if I were present. And we'll see in our companion study with Jubilees discussions concerning these things. In the name of the Lord Yeshua, when you are assembled with me present spiritually, and the power of our Lord Yeshua among us, hand over such a person to the adversary, for his old nature to be destroyed, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. So this man who was what? Living with his stepmother as husband and wife, which was forbidden, was a member of the church at Corinth. It goes on as we conclude in verses 9 through 13. It says, in my earlier letter, Shaul says, I wrote you not to associate with people who engage in sexual immorality. I didn't mean the sexual immoral people outside your community, or the greedy, or the thieves, or the idol worshipers. He wasn't talking about those people, not associate with them, because they had to be what? They had to be taught the word. So they had to be evangelized. So he wasn't talking about not associating with people who are not believers, but for those not to allow them to exist and refuse to acknowledge the teachings as Esau did while in the church. He said, no, what I wrote you was not to associate with anyone who is supposedly a brother, but who also engages in sexual immorality, is greedy, worships idols, is abusive, and gets drunk or steals. So those are people who have heard the teachings and refuse to adjust their lifestyle. They're basically intent on doing whatever they want to do. He says, with such a person, you shouldn't even eat. So if they've been taught, refuse to acknowledge the teachings and live by them, then you put them out. For what business is it of mine to judge outsiders? The word already has judged them. So he goes on to say, isn't it those who are part of the community that you should be judging, that you should demand they live in this manner? Elohim will judge those who are outside, but just expel the evildoer from among yourself. So this is the Haftarah in both the Old Testament and the New Testament that is a companion study to the word Vayishlach that we're going to be studying on today. And it begins in the first part of our session. As you look at your outline, basically the first part of our session goes from verse 4 all the way to verse 13. We're not going to read all those verses. You should have already done that. But basically, it's going to talk about how Jacob had been gone for 20 years, now is returning back to the land of Canaan to his father, whom he assumes is still alive, and make amends with his brother Esau. So the messengers that he met were what? In fact, Malachim, or angels. And these angels were sent to guide him, help guide him on his journey, and to encourage him. Because all through our journey in this life, there are many times we just need some encouragement. So Jehovah will send a song, a word. It's kind of difficult for us in many cases because of this world that we live in and how we have been mistaught to even understand the voice of angels. But we can understand it in a song or in a person, and we are encouraged to listen to that, take an opportunity to allow that to settle our spirits and go on and do what we were sent to this earth realm to do. So we see then that Yaakov sent these messengers then ahead of him to Esau, his brother, toward the land of Seir. And I pointed that out on the map. And it is the country of Edom. And he gave him these instructions. here's what you ought to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Yaakov says, I have been living with Laban and have stayed until now. So he's saying, we're getting ready to return, and I've been living with Laban as a foreigner in the land of Haran. I have cattle, donkeys, and flocks, and male and female servants. I am sending to tell this news to my Lord in order to win your favor. So now he is coming. He has been humble by dealing with Laban. And all along that, even while he was with Laban, and then when he had that final confrontation with Laban, before he began to continue his journey to the land of Canaan, then Jehovah was continually speaking to him concerning what was going to happen. He says, and all that he's gained, he said, I am sending to tell this news to my Lord in order to win your faith. So now he's humbling himself. Verse 7, the message returned to Yaakov saying, we went to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you. With him are 400 men. So Esau had bad intentions, just as he had when he said he was going to kill his brother. So if he's coming with 400 men, most likely soldiers that he had brought as part of his little army to meet his brother. Well, so he has bad intentions. So there are some things that are going to transpire with him to change his mind. The scriptures don't tell us in terms of our lesson here and what I'm going to deal with today, but in the book of Jasher, which is also a part of what they call the apocryphal or the hidden teachings, it talks about what happened to Esau to change his mind, because he changed from coming with 400 men to kill him and everything that's with him to hugging and kissing him while as they met. So anyway, the messengers go and come back and say, it's not going to go well. Yaakov became greatly afraid and distressed. Now, we already learned that Yaakov didn't want to fight, but he wasn't the kind of person that couldn't. He just didn't want to, and he certainly didn't want to fight his brother in this army, because in that situation, he was going to, in fact, have to kill and may end up killing his brother. He didn't want to do that. So he became greatly afraid and distressed because of the fact that his brother was intent on coming with 400 soldiers with him to meet him. So then he divides his flock, the people, flocks, cattle, and camels with him into two camps, saying, if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, at least the camp that is left will escape. Then Yaakov said, he goes and prays to Jehovah, the father of Abraham and the Elohim of my father Yitzhak. Jehovah, who told me, return to your country and your kinsmen, and I will do you good. Remember, we always get the end before the beginning, but there is a process, and that process is always used to strengthen, to encourage, and to prepare us. He says, he's praying now. He says, I am not worthy of all the love and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff, but now I have become two camps. Please rescue me from my brother Esau. I am afraid of him, afraid he'll come and attack me without regard for mothers or children. You said, I will certainly do you good and make your descendants as numerous as the grains of sand by the sea, which are so many that they can't be counted. So Yaakov prays this prayer because he's afraid, not just the fact that his brother is coming with these soldiers he believes to do harm to him and everyone that's with him, but the fact that now he and those servants that are with him are going to have to arm themselves to prepare to do battle. And so with that, we end the first part of our session. There isn't any corresponding information per se. I didn't want to introduce the book of Jasher, but I will state some of the things that were in that particular book regarding this situation of Esau and Yaakov going to meet and what the messenger said and did with Esau on his journey to turn his heart from war to peace. In the second part of our session, we're going to, Jacob then sends servants ahead with cattle to try to appease him through gift, which was what he did with Laban by giving him labor, then watching over his flock and working 7 years for his first wife and 7 years for his second wife. And all that had transpired was because of the fact that he didn't choose to do battle with people he believed were his king. But he wasn't going to not fight, but he's sending this ahead to try to appease his brother in the natural because he knows that his brother is very flesh orientated, which, you know, the fact that he married the other two women that were from the land of Canaan, which he had been instructed not to do. And he goes on to say, then he had a second servant and a third, and all that followed the drove. When you encounter Esau, you ought to speak to him in the same way. And you ought to add, and there just behind us is your servant Yaakov, for he said, I will appease him first with the present that goes ahead of me. Then after that, I will see him myself, and maybe he will be friendly toward me. Remember, we studied in last week's lesson from the book of Jubilees that he was willing to fight his brother to protect his mother and his father. He would fight him if necessary. But his mother didn't want that to happen, so she told him to leave and then convinced Isaac to tell him to leave as well and go find a wife until such time as Esau would calm down, because he had promised he was going to kill him soon as his father died. Father was already blind. They didn't know how long he was going to live, but we're going to even get into some of that today, because he's going in our study today in Vayishlach, Isaac is going to die. So the president crossed over ahead of him. Now this was at the river Jabbok. So let me see if I can show that on our map. Here coming back, you see here is a river, but the river Jabbok is further down this way around in the land of Gilead, where he wrestled with this angel. And so this river Jabbok comes out here and goes this way into the land of what we call Gilead. And so that kind of deals with the second part of our section. So with that, he says in verse 25, and Yaakov was left alone. Then some man wrestled with him until daybreak. We believe that was a Malachim or an angel. When he saw that he did not defeat Yaakov, so he's trying to force Yaakov to look at himself, look at the lessons that he's learned, and use that to strengthen him spiritually for what lies ahead. But this angel, and he's wrestling all night with Yaakov in the flesh, trying to get him to conquer his flesh by his spirit. The last thing he did was to pray, but before that, he tried to get prepared for war. But he was getting prepared for war without even praying to the Lord. And so now this angel is wrestling with him all night. Then he strikes Yaakov in the hip socket so that his hip was dislocated while wrestling with him. This was so that he would let him go. The man said, "Let me go because it's daybreak." So obviously he was told until daybreak to work with Yaakov to convince him to stop being so fleshly and allow the spirit man, because why? He's the priestly lineage. So they're supposed to always think spirit before flesh. But Yaakov replied, or Jacob replied, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." So he wants to get the satisfaction that things are going to go well. The man asked, "What is your name?" And Yaakov answered, "Yaakov." The man said, "From now on, you will no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have shown your strength to both Elohim and me and have prevailed." So he's reminding him of everything that he's been delivered from in the land of Haran, from Laban and his army. So he's reminding him that you're so distressed, you're so afraid. The scripture said that we are not to what? Perfect love casts out all fear. So if you humble yourself before the throne of the Creator and trust in his word, which he had already given you, I'm going to bring you back to this place, and you haven't gotten there yet. If you allow your spirit man to talk to you, then you won't be so afraid. Yaakov asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he answered, "Why are you asking about my name?" And blessed him there. So spiritually now, he's trying to, this angel's job was to prepare Yaakov for this meeting that he's going to have with Esau. And yet and still, with all that preparation, just understand that even for in our practical application, even in our lives, with these difficult tasks that we face, and the Lord delivers us from a particular situation, no matter what that was that seemed so large to us at that time. Well, each one of those are what we call stepping stones to strengthen you and prepare you for even greater tests that will come. And we talked about that extensively in the life of Abraham. But many times we still need that boost until the promise comes. Because until the promise comes, we have a word before us. But the preparation and the process of receiving that requires us to have strong spiritual muscles. And we talked about Ephesians 6, understanding we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirituality and evil wickedness in high places in the heavens. So there are demons, there are angels, and there are our flesh. So we have to battle all those at all times, and we just need those boosters. And so with that, we get into the third part of our session, which Yaakov now is going to meet his brother and find out. Now, once again, he wasn't going to run. He didn't run from his brother now. Now he's going towards his brother. And let's look at that and see how that works. In the third part of our session, from Genesis 32, verse 31, all the way to chapter 33, verse 5. Yaakov called the place Paniel, the face of Elohim, because I have seen Elohim face to face. Yet my life is spared. As the sun rose upon him, he went on past Peniel, limping the hip. So now this place where he had wrestled, which I showed you on the map, now he's got his family around this river Yabuk, and he raised his eyes and looked out, and there was Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So Yaakov divided the children between Leah, Rachel, and the two slave girls, his other two wives, putting the slave girls first and their children first. Right? So that would be 4 children. Leah and her 6 children, and her children second, and Rachel and Joseph. So there was only one child there with Rachel because she was pregnant with her second child. Then he himself passed on ahead of them and prostrated himself on the ground 7 times before approaching his brother. So he didn't stay back and let his brother pass all of them. He went to face this situation head on. So what the angel had inspired him to do, he was still afraid, not knowing what was going to happen, but he was going to go and face this, which reminds us of David and how him and Goliath, and the men were so afraid of Goliath, but David didn't run from Goliath, he ran at him and then tossed a stone and killed Goliath. So we are encouraged to face this situation head on, and then, but we're to have the peace of the Lord as we approach that situation. Still might be a little afraid of what's going to happen, but determined that we will be delivered from the situation. Then look what it says. Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now remember, Esau left to come and kill his brother and everybody that was with him. But along the way, remember, the angels were sent ahead to speak with him. They came back and told Yaakov what was getting ready to happen. But they also went back with the herds of cattle and everything that were, those 3 sections of cattle that were sent. They went to confront now Esau, because the challenge was to get Esau's heart to change. Because you're not going to, just like the angel told Laban, don't you touch that man. And Laban said, I want to get you, but I can't. Well, they had to do the same thing with Esau. And Esau had 400 men who were encouraged in him to go ahead and do what he had to do. And so when he gets there, Esau looked up and then saw the women and children, and he asked, whose are these with you? And Yaakov answered, the children Elohim has graciously given to your servant. Well, in the book of Jasher, it basically states that when the angels went back with each section of cattle that came, angels approached Esau and told him, you won't touch that man. Now Esau was mad. So he was like, I don't care what you say. We're going to take care of this. But every time, then the second one came. Angels came again and told him, take the gift because you are not to touch that man. Then when the third group came, Esau still riding fast and hard. They came, but this time telling him that we are prepared to wipe you and your army out. You will not touch that man. So with that, Esau got the hint and basically changed his mind about what he intended to do to his brother. And with that, we're going to go into the 4th part of our session, where we encounter the family meets Esau, then all that had been sent before him, he bargains a little bit, but he gonna accept it, right? Because he realized you have no victory here. As a matter of fact, when that last group came, unless you change your mind now, we getting ready to wipe you out. So Esau was calm by the time he saw his brother, because he realized, remember, he had been taught by Abraham and Isaac about what power is in, has been given to the priestly line and all the sons of Abraham and Isaac. But it's based on obedience. So he had something to help him with this. But those angels, according to the book of Jasher, are the ones who basically convinced him physically in his flesh that we are here to end this. And that at that he was changed. So he goes on. Then the slave girls approached with their children, and they prostrated themselves. Leah too, and her children, remember she had at least 7, approached and prostrated themselves. And last came Joseph and Rachel, and they prostrated themselves. Esau asked, what was the meaning of this procession of droves I encountered? And Yaakov answered, it was to win my Lord's favor. Esau replied, I have plenty already, my brother. Keep your possessions for yourself. Yaakov said, no, please. If I have won your favor, then accept my gift. Just seeing your face has been like seeing the face of God now that you have received me. So please accept the gift I have brought you. For Elohim has dealt kindly with me, and I have enough. Thus he urged him until he accepted. Yaakov doesn't know what the angels knew, and that is, wasn't going to be no fight. All the fight was gone from Esau because he realized to move on further toward his brother with vengeance in his heart was going to end his life and all those 400 men that were with him. So from there, he goes on and it talks a little bit about how Esau tried to get Yaakov to come to the land of Seir with him, but Yaakov is going to go across the Jordan into the land of Canaan. So he convinces Esau to go his way, and Yaakov would go his. So Yaakov then goes on to Sukkot, where he built himself a house and put up shelters for his cattle. This is where the place is called Sukkot, or shelters. Remember, the festival of Sukkot for 7 days is all about shelters or tents, which the children of Israel were to honor every year at this festival. And then, having traveled from Padam Aram, Jacob arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp near the city. From the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of silver the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent. There he put up an altar, which he called Elohim, Yisrael, Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. So there in Shechem, he builds this altar. So let me run back quickly to the map. And we see in the map, here is Shechem right here. That is Shechem. All right. So he comes back there to Shechem. And in this 4th part of our session, we just have a note. This was 2143. So it's about 8 years after he had left Laban to come back. Remember, he went in 21:15. So it's been 28 years. So 28 years later, he is now getting ready to travel to the land of Salem, east of Shechem, in peace in that month of that year. And so now, once he goes to Shechem, he's going to continue on his travel towards meeting his father. So with that, we're going to get into the fifth part of our session. You see how we're doing with time. We're doing pretty good. Fifth part of our session, which if you look at your outline, we're going to find out what happens in Shechem. Remember, he already met them. They met him. He bought a parcel of land just to build his shelters and things like that on, but they're shepherds. So the flocks have to travel around and eat. But he got that parcel for kind of a headquarters for his flock. So with that, we're going to get into how the son of Hamor, Shechem, then is going to rape Dinah, who would be probably 12 to 13 years old, right? But obviously she had, she could now bear children. And so she was of marriage age. One time, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, remember Leah had she was one of the last of the children born to Leah, whom she had born to Yaakov, went out to visit the local girl. So Shechem was like a city. And she goes to hang out in Shechem. And Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the local ruler, saw her, grabbed her, raped her, and humiliated her. But actually, he was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov. He fell in love with the girl and tried to win her affection. Shechem spoke with his father Hamor and said, "Get this girl for me. I want her to be my wife." Remember, Hamor had already sold a parcel of land to Yaakov and his children. I want her to be my wife. When Yaakov heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter, his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Yaakov restrained himself until they came. He had some servants with him when some kind of way he found out that this had happened to Dinah. Could have been a servant girl had gone with her, and in her journey into the city, saw her get snatched by them, and then came back and reported to Yaakov what had happened. Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Yaakov to speak with him. Just as Yaakov's sons were coming in from the field, when they heard what had happened, the men were saddened. Now, when they say men, these were teenagers. These were just teenagers. And very angry at the outrage this man had committed against Israel by raping Yaakov's daughter, something that is simply not done. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem's heart is set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife and intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You will live with us and the land will be available to you. You'll live, do business, and acquire possessions here." But they had been instructed not to marry a woman from the land of Canaan. Those were their instructions. So they said to them, "We can't do it because it would be a disgrace to give our sister to someone who hasn't been circumcised." Remember, circumcision was something that Abraham was taught was what? Part of the covenant that they made with Jehovah the Creator. Only on this condition will we consent to what you are asking, that you become like us by having every male among you get circumcised. So you join with our group. Then we'll give our daughters to you, and we'll take your daughters for ourselves, because in their deceit, they're saying, then we can intermarry with you. Otherwise, we can't have any part in this. We'll live with you and become one people. Now, as we complete this section, they go back to their men, tell them, look, we're getting ready to get paid because our son is going to marry this family and we're going to become one people. And the only condition is all the men have to be circumcised. Right? So that'll be anyone, basically any male specifically, but definitely all the men, because of course the brothers were being deceitful. They had another plan. On the third day, verse 25 says, on the third day after the circumcision, when they were in great pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords, boldly descended on the city, and slaughtered all the males. They killed Hamor and Shechem his son with their swords, took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and left. Then the sons of Jacob entered over the dead bodies of those who had been slaughtered and plundered the city in reprisal for defiling their sister. They took their flocks, cattle, and donkeys, and everything else, whether in the city or in the field, everything they owned, their children and wives, they took captive, and they looted whatever was in the houses. Then they come back, but Yaakov said to Simeon and Levi, you have caused me trouble by making me stink in the opinion of the local inhabitants, the Canaanites, and the Perizzites. Since I don't have many people, they'll align themselves together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. They replied, should we let our sister be treated like a whore? So basically, they weren't repentant for what they had done. They felt like they had a right to avenge their sister who had been raped. Yaakov basically says, you didn't have to go about it like this, because now all of the surrounding people are going to get together and attack me because they know what you've done. You've lied and been deceitful to this city, to these people. And that's going to come back against us, because the scriptures say we are not to do something like that. However, we're going to learn by going into Jubilee that there was some type of rationale for what the brothers did in terms of fighting, but the way in which they did it was, in fact, deceitful, just like the way in which Yaakov treated his brother, even though he was going to get the priestly blessing, with deceit with their father. And so we see this being played out once again by his sons. And we're going to see it play out even more later. He goes on to say in verse 3 of chapter 35, we're going to, Yaakov tells his family, we're going to move on to go up to Bethel now. We need to go to Bethel because I got to get out of here. Why? Because they are going to come cause war, and they're going to greatly outnumber us. Once again, it doesn't say anything here about him praying. So that fleshly orientation has risen up again, and Jehovah comes to console him. And he goes on to say, there I will build an altar to God who answered me when I was in such distress and stayed with me wherever I went. They gave Yaakov all the foreign gods in their possession in the hearing, because he told them, get rid of all that now. because now I'm going up to Bethel, which is the house of Elohim. And going there, don't bring any of that stuff with you. And we can, all y'all can go with me, but you can't bring any foreign idols. This is, in fact, the house where I encountered Jehovah with the ladder and everything else. So he said they gave Yaakov all the foreign gods in their possession, which would have been the ones that Rachel had stolen, and maybe some of the ones from some of the servants that they had taken captive from Shechem, and all the earrings they were wearing. And Yaakov buried them under the pistachio tree near Shechem. While they were traveling, a terror from Elohim fell upon the cities around them, so that none of them pursued the sons of Yaakov. And so it was true that what Yaakov had said, they were coming to get him. But Jehovah comes in the form of an angel and tells him to go now, go up to Bethel, and he will meet with them there. So with that, that completes the fifth part of our session, because he still hasn't met his father, but he's going to journey now, as I showed you on the map. He's going to journey from Shechem up to Bethel, which is where he built the ladder, which is like near Mount Moriah. Now we're going to get into Jubilees, because it says to read Jubilees, chapter 30, verses 4 through 7, and get some additional information for our companion study. And Simeon and Levi came unexpectedly to Shechem and executed judgment on all the men of Shechem, slew all the men whom they found in it, and left not a single one remaining in it. They slew all in torrents, because they had dishonored their sister Dinah. And thus let it not again be done from henceforth that a daughter of Israel be defiled. For judgment is ordained in heaven against them, and that they should destroy all with the sword, all the men of the Shechemites, because they had wrought shame in Israel. And Yah delivered them into the hands of Yaakov, that they might exterminate them with the sword and execute judgment upon them, and that it might not thus again be done in Israel, that a virgin of Israel should be defiled. Verse 7, and if there is any man who wishes in Israel to give his daughter or his sister to any man who is the seed of the Gentiles, he shall surely die, and they shall stone him with stones, for he has wrought shame in Israel. And they shall burn the woman with fire, because she has dishonored the name of the house of her father, and she shall be rooted out of Israel. So in the tablets that we're going to see a little bit later, this was decreed. This is something that would happen should someone, in fact, harm one of the women of the children of Israel. Also, we are said to go to 23 and 26. And it says, on that day when the sons of Jacob slew Shechem, a writing was recorded in their favor in heaven, that they executed righteousness and uprightness, and vengeance on the sinners, and it was written for a blessing. And they brought Dinah, their sister, out of the house of Shechem, and they took captive everything that was in Shechem, their sheep and their oxen and their asses and all their wealth and all their flocks, and brought them all to Jacob, their father. And he reproached them because they had put the city to the sword, for he feared those who dwelt in the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And the dread of Yah was upon all the cities around Shechem, and they did not rise to pursue after the sons of Jacob, for terror had fallen upon them. So even though they didn't do it correctly, by deception, they still avenged, so that all the people will understand from this day forward that they were not to harm any of the women of the children of now, of course, of Jacob or his household, that they would realize that a punishment was coming. It may not have been done deceitfully, for they could have prayed to God and then been given permission to go and do what they do, because the rule was you cannot let them get away with that. The manner in which they handled it, just like the manner in which Jacob handled the priestly lineage from his father Isaac, was done incorrectly. But what was mandated by the Creator, Jehovah, was carried out, in that Jacob is the priestly line, and the study of what to do in situations of this type was given to him, not the deceit, but what the law of the land would be. And so with that, we're going to complete the fifth part. We get into the sixth part of our session. In the sixth part, we're going to see where Rachel will give, he's now traveling on the road toward Bethel, and she's going to give birth, and she is going to die there. Moreover, the land starts with 35, verse 12, all the way to 36:19. Moreover, the land which I gave to Abraham, and Isaac, I will give to you, and I will give the land to your descendants after you. It's the angel talking to Yaakov. Then Elohim went up from him there where he had spoken with him. Remember, he told him to go to Bethel, and there I will meet with you there. Yaakov set up a standing stone in the place where he had spoken with him, a stone pillar. He had done that upon leaving the land of crossover to go into Gilead and then go up towards Haran. Then he poured out a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. Yaakov called the place where Elohim spoke with him Beth El, or what we call in English Bethel. Then he traveled on from Bethel, and while there was still some distance to go before arriving in Ephrath or Bethlehem, Rachel went into labor, and she had great difficulty with it. While she was undergoing this hard labor, the midwife said to her, "Don't worry, this is also a son for you." But she died in childbirth. As she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, son of my grief, because she was not going to be around. Yosef and now this newborn baby were going to be raised by her midwife. But she said, "This is in my grief. I won't be around to raise the children that I've had." But his father, Yaakov, changed that name and called him Benjamin, or son of the right hand, or son of the south. So Rachel died and was buried on her way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Yaakov set up a standing stone on her grave. It is the standing stone of Rachel's grave to this day. So even at the time the children of Israel, Moshe was writing this, that's why it says to this day, because they, in going back into the land, were going to see this place and see this stone. Verse 27, Yaakov came home to his father Isaac at Mamre near Kiryat Arba, also known as Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had lived as foreigners. Remember, the tomb where Abraham was buried is near Hebron. Isaac lived to be 180 years old. Now, if we look back on this, remember this was 8 years later, so this was what? 2143. When he left to go, it was 2115. When he was born, Isaac was 60 years old when Yaakov was born. So at the time he went to Hebron, he was nearly 70 years old when he left. And so at this time, 28 years to that, he's almost 100 years old. But even in being 100 years old, Isaac, at that point in time, had not passed. So he got an opportunity. Isaac would have been somewhere around 160 years old. He didn't die until he was 180 years old. So there would have been 20 years or somewhere around 12 years that Isaac lived after Yaakov returned to him in the land of near Hebron. So in all this time, he still had about 13 years to live with his father. Doesn't say anything about his mother, so it is believed that by this time she had passed on, so he may never have seen his mother again. So with that, we're going to go into close out our sixth session, which goes basically into the genealogy of Esau, chapter 36, verses 1 through 19, and the seventh part of our lesson, which is all about the descendants of Edom, and it basically talks about the fact that they became a great nation, just like it was said to Yaakov that he would, and Isaac prophesied to Edom that he would be great and would have many kings come from his lineage. And basically, chapter 36 goes all the way into that from verse 1 all the way to verse 43. However, we also see that in the book of Jubilees, it talked about Yah appearing to him by night, blessed him, and said unto him, thy name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. So he keeps reminding him that you're no longer that fleshly thinking Yaakov, you are now spiritually thinking Israel. I am Yah, he says in verse 18, who created the heaven and the earth, and I will increase thee and multiply thee exceedingly. And kings shall come forth from thee, and they shall judge everywhere whatever the foot of the sons of men has trodden. So you children of Jehovah are supposed to be what? The head and not the tail. And this was reminded to Yaakov in this particular part of Jubilees, chapter 32, verses 17 to 25. And I shall give to thy seed all the earth which is under heaven. Of course, this is also going to be this will all be manifested at the time of Yeshua. When Yeshua returned, then the whole earth is going to be under his rule. And they shall judge all the nations according to their desires. And after that, they shall get possession of the whole earth and inherit it forever. And he finished speaking with him, and he went up from him, and Jacob looked up until he had ascended into heaven. And he saw a vision of the night, and behold, an angel descended. Remember the ladder at Bethel that had angels ascending and descending. And the angel descended from heaven with 7 tablets in his hand, because he's just been given a prophecy that won't happen until Yeshua returns. And he had 7 tablets in his hands, and he gave them to Yaakov. And he read them and knew all that was written therein, which would befall him and his sons throughout all the ages. And he showed him all that was written on the tablets, and said unto him, do not build this place, and do not make it an eternal sanctuary, and do not dwell here, for this is not the place. So Bethel was not the place that he was supposed to stay. He was to go to the house of Abraham thy father and dwell with Isaac thy father until the day of the death of thy father. For in Egypt thou shalt die. So he's already told him way back at this point, before the death of Isaac, that this is what's going to happen to him. And he saw it written on stones. So that means this is going to happen. It's written in stone. He said, you're going to die in Egypt in peace, and in this land shalt thou be buried with honor in the sepulchre of thy fathers, Abraham and Isaac. So your body will be brought back. But all of this is futuristic, and he's assuring him it's written in stone, this is going to happen. Fear not, for as thou hast seen and read it, thus shall it all be. And do thou write down everything as thou hast seen and read. So take from these tablets and write it on parchment. And Yaakov said, Lord, how can I remember all that I have read and seen? And he said unto him, I will bring all things to thy remembrance. Reminding us that when Yeshua told his disciples that he was going to send the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, to them, and the Holy Spirit would do what? Bring all things that I have taught you, bring all things to your remembrance. And so it reminds us all of that, and all of this transpired way back at the time of Jacob. And Jacob went and dwelt in the south of Magdalathriah, and he went to his father Isaac, and he and his wife Leah on the new moon of the 10th month. And Reuben saw, at this time, Reuben takes Bilhah, Rachel's maid, the concubine of his father, bathing in water in a secret place, and he loved her. So he lusted for her. And he and he hid himself at night. And he entered the house of Bilhah at night and found her sleeping alone on a bed in her house. And he lay with her. And she awoke and saw, and behold, Reuben was lying with her in bed. And she uncovered the border of her covering and seized him and cried out, and discovered that it was Reuben. And she was ashamed because of him, and released her hand from him and fled. So we see then that in the sixth part of our session, it talked about the fact that Reuben interfered with the life of Bilhah, the servant of his father, or basically his wife, and had sex with her, therefore defiling her, and she was ashamed because of him. Now, as we conclude our lesson, because we're not going to read the rest of Esau's lineage because of time, and she lamented because of this thing exceedingly, and did not tell it to anyone. And when Jacob returned and sought her, she said unto him, I am not clean for thee. So these things had been taught to the wives of Yaakov about what he had been taught by Isaac and Abraham. So these words had been transferred to them orally. These things were known by her. She says, for I have been defiled as regards thee. For Reuben has defiled me, and has lain with me in the night, and I was asleep, and did not discover until he uncovered my skirt and basically raped me. And Jacob was exceedingly wroth with Reuben, because he had lain with Bilhah, because he had uncovered his father's skirt. So all these things had been taught to them and taught to them in oral lessons from Abraham and later Isaac. And as for any man who uncovers his father's skirt, his deed is wicked exceedingly, for he is abominable before Yah. And that basically concludes our lesson for tonight. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. I've had a great time sharing this lesson with you, and we've had a great time. I hope you've had just as great a time learning, gathering this, gleaning this information. We are going to try and come together on a Wednesday night, maybe once a month, and discuss everything we've studied. So I will send you out some emails for that as we go forward. That was suggested to me through everyone in our lesson path from our material that we send out. And so we're going to try to see if we can do that at least once a month for to go over, and you can ask questions. It'll be a group chat, and you can ask questions about anything we've covered during that period of time. We'll send out a message concerning that, and most likely we'll be doing that in the new year. So we'll start doing that in the month of January, and we'll try to cover whatever we've covered all the way up until that point in time. We'll try to go back and talk about that, but primarily be concerned with anything we've covered in those last 4 weeks of that particular month. And so with that, so we'll be doing January. In January, we'll do December. So with that, let me see if I have anything else in the chat. No, with that, let us do the priestly blessing. Everybody put your hands towards one another. And from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26, may Jehovah bless you and keep you. May Jehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Jehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And with that, I say shalom. I'll see you next Friday for lesson 9. Shalom, everyone. Blessings to my sister's husband. Peace to him for the transition of his brother. And I don't know, but I think I'll see you tomorrow. I think I'll see you tomorrow at the your granddaughter's event. With that, shalom. Let me get out.